Commissioner Rasmussen, Commissioner Everett.
Here. So we do have a quorum because 4 of our 7 are here, correct?
Correct.
So we're good?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. I'd like to move forward with approval of the minutes from our last meeting on August 27th, 2015. Everybody should have been distributed a copy of those prior to. So at this time, if anyone has any changes or recommends anything that needs to be done differently, speak now or forever hold your peace. No? With that, can I entertain a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make that motion to approve the minutes.
Have a second?
Second.
Can you call the roll on that, please?
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Carr,
Yes.
Commissioner Domingue, Commissioner Noble,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence, Commissioner Rasmussen, Commissioner Everett.
Yes. With that, we'll move on to new business. Item 1 is to consider the application for entering into a development agreement between the City of Madeira Beach and the Barefoot Beach Resort LLC. Can we get a staff report on that? Or Tom, did you want to comment on the development agreement since you wrote it?
Well, first of all, I want to just introduce you to Louis Cerna. Mr. Cerna is the city's staff person, consultant, that's going to talk to you about the 2 issues that you're going to hear tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the development agreement. Mr. Bodziak's also in the audience. He was part of the drafting of that development agreement as well. But you'll remember, as some background, that there was a request to rezone the Barefoot Beach Resort property located at 13220 Gulf Boulevard from R3 to PD. That was recommended for approval back at your June meeting. The only thing that you are here considering tonight is the development agreement itself. And the ultimate goal is to determine whether or not you're going to give a recommendation to the commission as to whether or not it should be approved. And I'm not sure if Mr. Cerna's got comments other than that, but City Attorney's Office is recommending approval.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. Staff did review this item for compliance with the requirements for development agreements of Article 4, Chapter 86 of the Code of Ordinances. And staff is also recommending approval of is recommending that the Planning Commission recommend approval of this development agreement, and I'd be glad to try to answer any questions you may have.
At this time, I'll open the floor for the commissioners. Any questions, comments for the staff or city attorney at this time? Mike?
So after we approved it last time, it never made it to the commissioners for their approval. We're back again for the same topic.
No, I think this is just a development agreement.
Just the development agreement.
Development agreement.
Is that right, Tom?
That's right. It was the zoning before.
The zoning before.
And now this is the development agreement, which is basically a contract between the city and the developer as to what can be developed on the property. And frankly, it's to make sure that they don't do anything other than what they agree to do here in the development agreement. And it basically provides the developer with a little bit of a roadmap as to what they can expect once it's approved by the City Commission after a recommendation from this board, at least. Some basic information about the agreement other than the fact who the parties are. There is what we call a site data table on page 1, and it sets forth the different regulations that apply on each one of the things from zoning to lot area to lot width to building width and building coverage and so forth. And you can see that they've met all those regulations that are set forth in the site data table. You will notice that there are a couple of different colors in the development agreement when you look at it, and I will tell you the reason of those different colors is because that's some of the language that was added subsequent to the original draft. There's nothing of other than any significance other than the fact that once we had staff look at it, Mr. Cerna look at it, Mr. Healy look at it, the city engineer look at it, they've made some recommendations, and that's why there are some added colors, different colors to the agreement. We wanted you to see that those changes were made, but obviously the final document would not have those colors, would not have those underlines and strikeouts and so forth, but so you can see the different colors based upon different people that were recommending suggestions in the agreement. But the bottom line is if this agreement is not executed by the developer by the 31st day of December 2015, after it's approved by this board and the commission, then it would be basically null and void. So it is time important. That doesn't mean that if you get to a point where you don't have sufficient enough information, you want other information, that we couldn't change that date. I don't want you to feel like you're boxed into a corner because we've added that date. So, but this agreement is very, very similar to the other development agreements that our law firm has prepared on behalf of the city. For example, the CVS development agreement, the Marriott development agreement. It's the same basic bones with a different site data table added to it.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Thanks, Tom.
sure.
Anything else from the commissioners?
Well,
I wanted to ask Mr. Bodziak to comment on it, too.
Okay,
first
but what I was getting at is that at the end of the last meeting, we had good public support regarding some adding into the construction. And I don't know if this pertains to the development agreement for adding the sea oats and sand dunes as part of their construction plan. Is that in here? I didn't see anything regarding that.
It is not in here.
Okay,
So if that's something additional that you would recommend to the commission,
yes.
that approval conditioned upon the following language being added, and it would be nice to find out from the developer tonight whether or not that they agree with that, and if they agree with that, then it's going to be just a matter of me changing the language. If they don't agree with it, then it would be coming to the commission for the commission direction saying they will or they will not approve it with or without that language.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
And that was noted in the minutes, too, from the last meeting.
Right, and I didn't know if that made it into this or
It did
not, or
not.
we
I
still
wasn't
would
aware of
recommend that, because it had some good public support regarding that when we made that comment.
Okay.
Well, we certainly can, so.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Mr. Chair, if I can have the floor, A, I would
Yes, sir.
recommend that that language be added. And then secondly, the reason why we're back to add to Commissioner Noble's comment is because of the extended medical leave of the relevant department head, the development agreement didn't get off the ground, so to speak, and get to the city attorney's office. We could have done the rezone and the development agreement at the same time, and from here on out, staff will strive to do that. It was just extraordinary circumstances as to why we're doing this twice, basically. The other reason that I don't like that is it causes confusion with the public, because here we are basically approving the same thing again, and if you don't do this on a day-to-day basis, it's a very confusing type process. So once we get back and up and running, we'll have all this done and ready to go all at the same time, so there's no further confusion and things like that don't get let out.
Okay, thank you. If there's anything else from the board?
No, just to, as you were going over it, Tom and Shane and everyone, you saw nothing contrary to what we've already discussed. All the setbacks were exactly as were discussed, like they were supposed to be, correct? I mean, I noticed them in here. It looked like they were correct to me. I know in the beginning, the setbacks were brought back on Gulf Lane a little bit to help those people over there. And then just wanted to make sure that everything that we had said that we would do did go into here. Did you see it that way?
My suggestion is that we have Mr. Bodziak step up.
Okay.
I was not present at those meetings, and I would like to get his representation on the
Okay.
record, his client's representation on the record, that those issues were addressed that came up at the meeting. I don't know the answer to your question.
Okay,
So,
Fair enough. Thanks,
Okay.
Tom.
right.
Jack, did you want to approach the podium? Identify yourself and all that good stuff?
Jack Bodziak, I'm the architect and the agent for the owners on the property. And I can confirm that, yeah, if you'll recall, we originally started out with a very tight setback on the south side yard. And what we did is expanded that from, in fact, it actually was smaller than what the minimum was at that time. We requested 15, and I think the minimum was 20 or something. But we increased that to 61 feet.
Okay,
And so we gave a significant increase in the property line on the south, trying to accommodate the neighbors to the south. Then we slid the building up the other direction. We still have a significant setback on that north property line. Unfortunately, I don't have my copy. I thought I had it in my, but it will tell you, I think it's, if I recall, it's something like 82 feet or something on the other side. That big vacant piece of grass that you see at the north end. Yeah, oh, great. On the north side, it is 80, I think that's 85 feet or 86 feet. So you have two really significant setbacks on the site, 61 and some change on the south, and 85 or 85 it looks like on the north. The front yard setback, we had a porte cochere that went out into that, and we pulled that porte cochere out of the configuration. We removed all the parking from the front of the building, brought it all underneath the building. We took the parking that was originally off of Gulf Lane, because there was some complaints about parking backing out onto Gulf Lane. So we removed the parking, really virtually expanded all the requested setbacks. We exceed the setback limitations significantly on the side yards, which was what we were attempting to do when we asked for the height. And I think it was a major accomplishment, and I think that the thing that's come to the forefront that kind of, my argument always has been that if you are asking for height, you need to give something back in the way of either additional setbacks or view corridors. And I think the thing that's kind of brought that to light in a lot of people's minds is what happened at the old Buccaneer on Treasure Island. The Great Wall of China that's up there is unbelievable to me, and to not see that there is a reason you give height, and it's not just to give height and more density or more, it's to improve something on the site. And I think we've accomplished that on this. I think that thing is pathetic on there. For another 20 feet, they could have had 50-foot setbacks on each end. You know, I think that what the board and the city has accomplished here is a credit to.
Well, they asked for that, but they didn't get it.
Pardon me?
They asked for that, but they didn't.
They asked for it, but they didn't get it. Well, you know, it's unfortunate, really, for everybody. I happened to stay for a few months next door, and it was really a shame to see that close up the way it did. So, but we did adhere to all the setbacks that we represented, and we're prepared to go ahead on that basis. And I think that it was a good job of mediation between the city and the property owners and ourselves in trying to accomplish this.
What about, Jack, the point that Commissioner Noble brought up earlier about the dunes and?
Well, my understanding was that you were going to make that a recommendation to the city.
Okay.
Naturally, the owners like the sand the way it is that are there, but I mean, I think that if that's a condition, it's a condition. I represented they liked that. They thought the open ground out there was nice, and the people that owned it before, I dealt with, 15 years ago, and they made a very conscious effort of constantly raking that out there to keep it from the dunes going in place. And they, I think, were one of the only ones on the beach that didn't sign the agreement with the DEP or with the state, and so that's why it was always left that way. But if it's a condition of the approval, it's a condition of the approval, whatever.
Okay.
I mean, there are some things that, naturally they like it the way it is because they have volleyball tournaments out there and all that stuff. But it's kind of like Caddies and Treasure Island has never had a dune out there because they make use of the beach differently. So that would be it.
Okay.
All right. Thank
Any
you.
questions for Mr. Boziak from the commission? No? Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay. At this time, we'll move to public commentary. We need to swear everybody in, Tom?
Yes. Anyone that's going to speak, if you can just stand up, raise your right hand, I'll go ahead and swear you in all at the same time. You swear the testimony you're about to give is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just remind everybody prior to speaking that we're going to honor the commission procedure of 3 minutes in the interest of time. Yes, sir. Could you identify yourself?
Edwards, Gulf Lane resident, protected address. Thank you for coming out today. I want to ask a question. Who viewed the neighborhood meeting video? Could you see a raise of hands? Have you seen the video yet for the neighborhood meeting? No. Have you read the notes of the meeting that Mr. Boziak took? No. The neighborhood meeting ordinance requires the applicant shall provide to the city both a written and video record of the neighborhood information meeting, including any representations made by the applicant to the attendees, which shall become a requirement for the project. So there are certain things that occurred in the neighborhood meeting that are not in the neighborhood agreement. So And then the neighborhood agreement, we talked about the roof deck, the fitness room choir area. Mr. Bozak said it was a very small area that was up on the rooftop. Now, the agreement talks about the site plan being Exhibit B. I don't know what Exhibit B is unless it's this one-page document. Do you have that in your documents? Is this Exhibit B?
Yeah, I gave it to Mr. Bodziak, but
If this is Exhibit B, it doesn't show anything about the rooftop. All it does is show the site plan of the building where it's going on the site, but it doesn't talk about the rooftop. During the meeting, we talked about how many seats are going to be in this bar, and he says it's going to be 15 to 20 seats in an enclosed structure on the rooftop. There's nothing in the development agreement saying that. We talk about that it's only going to be for guests staying there, but there's nothing in the agreement that talks about that other than what happens if a guest at the hotel invites friends over. Are they considered guests and they can go up and use the rooftop bar in the restaurant?
I would think so.
But it doesn't say
It
that.
talks in section,
It only talks about guests.
13F.
It says that it's only for guests, it's for limited use because they only have a small amount of parking for guests. What do you do if you have an owner of one of the condo units that's not staying there at the time, but is a local resident, someone else is renting his unit, can he come in and go to the rooftop bar? There's nothing that talks about that. So these are some things that need to be in the development agreement to talk about. Is there going to be live music on the roof deck or a DJ when they have a party up there? There's nothing that talks about that.
I would think that you would have those things, just
Yes,
as
sir.
common sense you would have.
That's what
Well,
we're
you're
asking
I don't
for, is to
think-
put that in the development agreement because it's not in there.
well, they're subject to the city noise ordinance, so.
Correct.
But when you're
Well,
up
I
on a
mean, every single aspect of what you want needs to be put in this development agreement.
well, I think that those particular issues need to be addressed.
Okay, do you have a list of these issues that you want us to go over?
I can put those in, yes, sir.
All right, that'd be awesome.
In page 6, talking about the final site plan, we've already talked about that.
So you'll give us a list
Well,
of things that you want us to put in
there's-
here if we can, correct?
There's a couple just more points I need to cover. I mean, we only have a few.
I'll give you some
It's not
additional
gonna be a long
time.
meeting.
I'll give you some
Thank
additional
you, sir.
time.
Covenants are entered into the parties, and they are recorded for long-term protection of the public, is what page 7 talks about. And it talks about the property being developed and completed on a timely basis. But there's nothing says that it has to be done within 2 years or whatever time period. Whenever you build a house or a project, you do it in phases. You get draws from the bank, and there should be something in there. What happens if Mr. Parker has a heart attack and dies? What happens if the development goes belly up? Do we want a partially built building there?
Well, this is part of the things in your list that you want us
Yes,
to look at. So you're going to give us this list of things that you want us to look at.
I'll give you my copy of my notes, but that's the question is what happens if the project goes belly up and you got a half-built building there? How's it going to get completed? Is there any bonding issue that is out there to go ahead and make sure that the project gets completed to protect the citizens of the town and the neighborhood?
Tom, anybody want to make some comment on this, or can you?
When he's finished, I'll be happy
Okay,
to
there you
give you
go.
my 2 cents worth on it.
Okay,
so.
very good.
The duration of the agreement, if you read the duration of the agreement, it talks about upon earlier of what happens earlier. The duration of the agreement is when the certificate of occupancy is issued or 10 years, whichever is the earlier point. Well, what good is the agreement if as soon as they get it built and they have their CO, the agreement stops? That doesn't protect the neighborhood.
Okay. I see your points, and I truly understand your concerns. I mean, don't think that we don't. We really, really do. And so if you would really put these concerns in a orderly list for us and pass them out, we'll be really happy to look at those.
The final site plan, we talked about in the neighborhood meeting that there would be no pilings that would be pounded, driven in as they do the building. And Mr. Bozak agreed, says, nope, they're all going to be drilled. Nothing in the development agreement talks about that, as the city ordinance requires. If it's agreed to during the neighborhood meeting, it has to be in the development agreement. It's not in there. Annual review. Who will review the the project on an annual basis. It talks about an annual review. The city will review it, but it doesn't say, is it going to be city manager, is it going to be building officials, is it going to be planning and zoning, and will a report be written? If the duration is only going to be until the CO is issued, there's not going to be any annual review to see if they're in compliance with the agreement. The problem is that across from Gulf Lane, you had a restaurant that was built. And the agreement for them getting the license, the neighbors said, okay, we'll give you the license, but you're not going to have any outside music. There's not going to be noise that's going to affect the neighborhood. So commission approved it. No agreement was made, nothing covenant on the property. New owner comes in, builds an outside deck, puts music up there, affects the neighborhood. So you can't have a short-term development agreement. You have to have something in place so it doesn't affect the neighborhood with the noise and the other issues that come about.
You're talking about ongoing after construction is completed?
I think
Well, that would be
it should be a
subject
10-year
to,
agreement.
that would then be controlled by the city laws and ordinances. You can't, we're not going to build laws into a development agreement.
Well, you certainly can. You can put certain restrictions in there concerning whether they can go ahead and have rooftop DJ, because that will just throw the sound much further than when it's down on a pool deck or out on the beach area. So it does affect the neighborhood a lot more, and you can put that into the development agreement. And then in the past, they've never had staff working during a special event. When you have these big wedding parties and they're cranking the music up, there's no manager around. Come 9 o'clock, they're gone. And we've had issues with that. I know it might be whether you can put that in there, but if you have events with 10 or more people, you know, should they have a staff person there?
All right, I'm going to, just one more time. If you would please get your list
I will
and
give it to the
give that to
Go
these
ahead and make
guys,
copies, sir.
and we will certainly, if we have to put a workshop together to get it done, we'll get it done, okay?
Thank you.
So thank you for your time, and get us that list. Please.
Mr. Chair,
Tom,
I'd
hang on
ask
just
that
a
you
second.
let the city attorney respond to this
Yeah,
comment.
Tom, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, this isn't an operating agreement. This is a development agreement.
Right.
And the purpose of the development agreement is to develop the property. And it's basically to put a structure and these facilities on the property. And once they're completed, the actual development agreement has done what it's supposed to do. How is the property developed? Has it been developed that particular way? The purpose of the development agreement is not to operate as a operating agreement for the rest of the life expectancy of this building. That's not the purpose of it. And the statute that allows us to have these development agreements and the ordinance that that governs these development agreements has nothing, no language in it whatsoever that would cover those different types of things. They would have to comply with every other regulation in the city code and every other criminal statute that has been adopted, whether or not they change the building or they develop the building the way that it's perceived to be right now. As for the timing of it, how long does it stay effective? Development agreements pursuant to the state statute are only allowed to exist for a certain period of time, and then they expire. The reason that we draft them so that they expire on the issuance of the CO, that means the property has been developed, or 10 years, is to make sure that some activity occurs out there within that 10-year period of time. Laws change, the code will change in 10 years, and so that is just a roundabout period of time that we use for the purposes of in 10 years. We're not going to let them have these different types of development rights, vested rights, after a 10-year period of time. They're going to have to come back in and they're going to have to start from scratch. Now, that can be for a shorter period of time, but that's usually the period of time that is used in these development agreements. So we can address all of Mr. Edwards' comments, I think, by way of good code enforcement and, frankly, a good neighbor. These people that are developing this want a good product, otherwise they wouldn't be spending probably millions and millions of dollars in doing it. And so I'm sure that some of this activity that's been mentioned, that's probably going to be frowned upon. You know, we can't control it, but obviously it's going to be frowned upon by someone who puts, $5 or $10 million in a building out there on the beach. So, and as for including those different types of things in there that Mr. Edward wants, As soon as the development agreement expires, it's not going to mean anything.
Correct.
So there's really no reason to include it in addition to that. The only other way that it can occur is as if both the developer and the city agree to record a restrictive covenant that goes along with the development agreement that would run past the time of the development agreement itself. And those restrictive covenants, some cities do, like we draft them into Needham and Tarpon Springs and some of the bigger cities when we have bigger developments, and we get the property owner to agree that certain portions of the property will only be used for this particular purpose, or they will make sure that there is a driveway or street access to another property. In other words, it's to basically to nail down the real estate issues, and that's why we record those restrictive covenants. But that doesn't mean that they can't agree to something and we make it into a restrictive
I would
covenant.
prefer not to go down that path.
Yeah, I would suggest that right here before you tonight is the development agreement acceptable or not? And if it's not, make your recommendation of approval or denial based upon certain conditions.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Tom. Do we have anybody else for public commentary? Sure.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
My name is Ron Loggett at 13231 Gulf Lane. Then I'm kind of confused because it says here that the applicant shall provide to the city both a written and video record of the neighborhood information meeting, including any representations made by the applicant to the attendees, which shall become a requirement of the project. Well, part of the things that he talked about was, first of all, and it's written down here, that he's willing to consider having the property west of Gulf Lane, if the commission so stipulates, remain R3. And I don't see that in the meetings. I mean, part of the stuff that he talked about, and part of the things we talked about at the meeting was the rooftop bar, the amount of people that can attend it, who can attend it, the amount of noise. And our understanding all along was it will become part of the project. And now I'm hearing that it's not part of the project. I'm confused.
It sounds to me like,
I saw the restrictions on the roof deck.
yeah, the restrictions are there. I think that you guys are having questions about the way it's going to be run after it's developed.
No, I'm talking about the size, how many people can attend, the size of the particular bar itself, what's going to be served up there,
Okay?
who's going to be allowed to be there. I mean, this was covered over and over. You need to view the video.
Okay.
I mean, that, to me, was going to be part of the agreement. I mean, it states it pretty clear in the code itself.
Okay.
So,
We get a copy of that video, it sounds like.
Well, did
I
the city,
think,
did
like the city
get
attorney
that?
said, folks, the development agreement is not an operating agreement. What was said at that meeting, if they agreed upon it, the piling and the construction possibly would be relevant. The dune, or the dunes or the sea oats might be relevant. But how these people run this business, all they have to do
I understand
is
that.
an operational
My question
management. They
is,
just have to comply with code.
My question is, how does it become a requirement of the project, as it states in here? The things that they were agreed to, how does it become a requirement of the project, if it's not in writing?
Well, the only thing I saw was the restrictions on the roof deck and restaurant areas and ancillary use for the hotel guests. That's what I saw. So.
That's what we're seeing in this.
Okay.
Is that contrary to what he told you?
Well, I think you need to view the video.
I mean, right here in the, would you read that one more time, please, Jim?
It said the proposed roof deck and fitness
Real
and bar area should be clearly and ancillary and subordinate to the principal hotel use. It should be intended for the convenience of the hotel guests, and as such shall operate in a manner that is customary and incidental to the operation of a hotel. The practice of providing at least limited food service is a service expected by hotel guests and a service that is routine provided by hotels. Restaurants shall comply with the definition of ancillary use found in section 82-2 of the Madeira Beach Code of Ordinances and is noted below. Because of its limited nature, this ancillary restaurant does not increase the need for additional parking. So not a destination restaurant.
Correct.
But in here it says, in the notes that he provided, which you need to take a look at, it says rooftop not open to the public.
Well, it says right
So
there,
it's
it's not
hotel
open to the
guests.
public. It says hotel guest limited, they're going to be serving limited things up there. It's not going to be a destination restaurant like the Fish House across the street, okay? I think that's pretty relevant in the dialogue that's in the,
You also said the stipulation possible as to Gulf front building for limited time to R3 standards.
And it also says, no
Well-
ancillary use shall exceed 25% of the gross floor area of the principal building.
yeah, and once
So that
those two
restricts the
properties are
size.
put together and they've been combined, there's a certain amount of space that can be used, okay? It doesn't matter if it's R3 or PD. They only have a certain amount of space that they can use for density. And all that's already in the city bylaws. And they are adhering to those density plans according to their charts that they're giving us here this evening. Are you seeing density issues or something that you wanted to bring
Well,
up?
the thing was, again, I go back to the record over here, and he had to cancel one of the meetings because it wasn't convenient for.
Yeah, we've heard all about, yeah, you
The
know.
second meeting had to
Mhm.
be taped, turned in, and, how does it become a requirement of the project, the things he agreed to,
Okay.
and the things that we pointed out? I still don't know that answer.
Well, I think the 2 points that have been brought up to me this evening that I would like Mr. Bodziak to answer would be the time of construction, when, they're ready to be shovel-ready on that, and what their approximate time of finish-out would be. And the other one, that was the main one. Oh, if in case the primary died of a heart attack, what would happen, John? We'd like to know that. Okay. So, I mean, that's the 2 things brought up to me tonight. Yeah, I mean,
I
time
think-
of construction, I certainly understand that. If I was living next door, I wouldn't want this going on for 5 years. I'd want it to be done as quickly as possible. And I'm assuming that's what you're wanting to get done as well.
So
So,
they don't make any money until it's done.
once we get going on this project, or what are your thoughts on the time of getting it developed?
And before we
Yeah,
do
let's
that,
go.
let's get back to
I don't
Tom's
want to get in the
point.
weeds too much.
I think we need to stick to why we're here tonight, and that's the development agreement. If there was conversation based on the operations, that may or may not have been germane at the neighborhood meeting. What should have been discussed at the neighborhood meeting where the contents of the reasons we're here tonight is the development agreement. Construction, when are you going to get it done? How are you going to do it? Are you going to use piling, so on and so forth?
Right.
Not are you going to have a band on the roof?
Yeah,
If I was a developer,
I'm
I
tired
would
of
have
talking
said,
Yeah, that's
about
already
that.
addressed.
that's
I
my
wanna talk
right
about getting this
to
thing
handle
built.
that as long as I stay
And
within
getting it
city
built
code.
and to make you guys happy, and to make another shining example of this city moving forward and not congealing around a lot of rhetoric. I think we all want to see good, quality projects happen in this town. I do for sure.
I do too.
And, I understand, I just see from meeting after meeting, it seems like the opposition has been bending over backwards to get everybody on this side of the aisle happy. And man, what's it going to take to get you guys happy? That's what I'd like to know.
Well, I guess I go back to the original question.
Yeah.
How to become part of the project?
Yeah, I can't speak for anyone on how it's going to be run, but I can tell you, I think that we're running a little short on getting this thing done, okay?
In the side here.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
Commissioner Brown, if I can interject.
Please.
You nailed it on the head. We've legged this one on long enough because there's financing issues for the owner. But I think the gentleman at the podium keeps bringing up a very valid point. How do we make it part of the agreement? You don't. It's not part of the agreement. The way that they operate, all they have to do is comply with city code. You can't dictate whether or not they're going to have a DJ up there. As long as they stick to the noise, I understand that. I understand that. If it was brought up at the neighborhood meeting and agreed upon, it probably wasn't germane at that neighborhood meeting, because if he wants to have a DJ up there, as long as he complies with all city codes, which everyone in town does, then he'll be, then
Right.
he's okay. How he operates isn't really any of your business. I know that's a crappy thing to say because this is in your backyard, and believe me, I feel for you. I've got sympathy for you. I'm not trying to be a jerk. But the development agreement is how do we develop the property? How he operates, as long as he complies with city code, is on him. So there might have been a mistake maybe made at that city, or at that neighborhood meeting as to what was discussed and what was agreed upon, because it's not, what was agreed upon is not germane to the document.
Well, you can't supersede city code,
you know.
Well, they could also try to change the city code.
Right.
That's another option. I mean, you know,
Absolutely.
you could try to change the city code if they're not operating the building in your neighbor, is the way you would like them to operate it. You know, that's always another option. Right now, we're just deciding to build the building.
Right.
Development agreement to
Right.
develop
How
the
you're going to
building.
develop the parcel is what
Yep.
you're dealing with tonight.
Thank
and
you,
what
sir.
timeframe.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
I'm Rose Loggett, 13231 Gulf Lane, directly west of the property and south of the current Barefoot Beach Resort. First off, I want to acknowledge Jack and the owners have made significant changes to the plan to try to accommodate us. One of our concerns was back in November, December timeframe, the definition of contiguous was redefined and it affected this property. This property is bifurcated by Gulf Lane, not the alley, the lane, which has addresses. And what we were just saying is that we had a concern. We're putting this building on the east side of Gulf Lane, and we wanted to ensure that the property on the west side of Gulf Lane was not also going to be, 5-over parking. So what we were asking for, and we thought we had some agreement, is that part of the property would remain R3 and comply with the codes as they exist and go in front of the magistrate as opposed to a PD. So that's where we were standing. Secondly, I think that there's been some negative comments towards the residents. We have been here for quite a long time. We're residents. We live here on and off. We now live in Lutz, but we have the property here. We're here quite frequently, and we do not really want the sea oats planted in front of the hotel because it does give access by the neighbors all around for a clear beach because we've been inundated by the sea oats, and to the point that I had to practically promise my firstborn to the state of Florida to be allowed to remove the sea oats by the previous owners. It was the dunes were up to the side of my house falling on my deck because they didn't clean their property there.
You don't want the dunes. You don't want the sea oats.
Well, we have some sea oats, we have the barrier, but in that area, we agree with the owners that it does, give us some clear beach area because the beach varies, based on the tidal, the tides. So, but we also wanted to ensure that, it was a good neighbor thing. And it's not that we don't want to see Madeira Beach developed, but we do want to use some rationale and we want to also use some common sense because we've seen what happened in the 70s. And we have those huge buildings that are on the beach. But there are no 5-story buildings between Gulf Lane and the beach if you look in the section of Gulf Lane, okay? And we definitely don't want to see the beach go up like that as well because we're not Treasure Island. We're not Clearwater Beach. We do... in fact, it's on your own website, we tout ourselves as being that small beach community. So we want to maintain that small fishing village, that small beach, because that's what the visitors want. They're tired of this hotels every corner, the beach are so crowded. This is a beautiful area. So all I'm asking you to do is, first off, have a better impression of the neighbors, that we're here just trying to work together to develop it, but we also want to see some fairness and some, recognition that, yeah, we do have rights too, okay? And we're not trying to inhibit anybody from developing. We just want to make sure it's a good neighbor, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Tom, I guess that raises a question. Since it's been designated as a PD, right, and it's a contiguous, is it possible to have multiple, like PD and then R3 for the other side of Gulf Lane? I mean,
Well, I thought we discussed this the last meeting. They would have to go through this whole process
Yeah,
again if they
again,
want to
to get
develop
it.
the west side property. So we're
Right,
not here
right.
to talk about that. We're
That
here to
was my
talk about the
understanding.
plans that are in front of us.
that was
That's
my
correct.
understanding too. Is that
Is
right?
that-
That's correct.
That is right. Okay.
So does that answer your question? So that's good.
Yeah. Okay, good. Anyone
I
else?
think as long as the lady brought it up in the audience, so what was it? There was not, the development agreement is void of to whether or not to plant additional sea oats or dunes. Is that correct?
It does not have that language in it.
It's not in
And
it.
that's what everybody wants.
No.
What I
No,
understand.
she doesn't want it.
They don't want it, but it's not in the agreement.
Correct, so we're done.
So we're good.
That
That's what I'm
issue's
telling you.
done.
Yeah,
Well, I thought last time that the residents were
They wanted it.
interested in that, but if you, oh, okay. You have the COs are behind your house. Right, when I walk the property.
Yeah, I saw that.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So the point is, the document is void of
It's
it,
fine.
so we're good to go.
We're fine.
So it's not an issue.
Good. Any other public commentary? Yes, sir? Evening.
Phil Sanders, resident 12301 Gulf Lane, North Development. It's not a major thing to me. I like to see oaks and vegetation. And I heard you just say, that's settled now. But I would urge the commission to take this opportunity to rethink that. That's a unique, we have about 1,000, a little less than 1,000, 600 feet, something like that, of unique vegetation and sand dunes in that portion of Madeira Beach. Runs out about 100 feet from the construction line toward the Gulf. And Christ Island doesn't have anything like that. As you go north, you don't have it. And the sand dunes are nice. I've lived there for 19 years. Initially, when we bought the house and moved here, that project was just started, and it was totally flat, like it is in front of Barefoot now. And anytime there was a rough storm, we'd get water under the house. Last 10 years, no water. So, that's a gap. If you're out there looking in front of Barefoot, it's white sand.
Sir, I hate to interrupt you, but the lady in the back is asking you to move the microphone up to your mouth so that people at home can hear you.
So I just urge you the opportunity to do an environmentally friendly action and have uniform vegetation and sand dune opportunity in that portion of Madeira Beach.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Phil.
There's a reason why some properties can have it and some are required, or don't have it? I mean, can we get a little brief rundown of why?
Do we know?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Years ago, there was a project to save the beaches, and the groins that are out there were placed, and you would have to seed your portion of that beach to have the groins to be protected. The Starks did not do that, so they were able to keep it free of the sand dunes. So that's basically what happened, and I agree that we do need to have beach preservation, and it does work, but I don't believe that it has to be a solid wall. So if the city was going to help us out, if they want to cut some paths for us to get to the beach, I mean, that's, or I go to the state and I have to ask permission, but the guy came down and he said, oh, you're going to have to build your walkway, like you have those public walkways. Yeah, we're supposed to build it through the center of the sea, and it didn't make sense. So, we did have that corner that's clear between us and the Barefoot Beach Resort, and if a storm comes, we can wall that up pretty quick with sandbags, and that'll prevent it from touching our three houses. And they have a seawall there, so that is protected. Not that I don't agree with the gentleman back there. I do, and I think we've done a great job of doing it, but I don't think it has to be a wall.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we've got an expert on staff that handles that, and we plant COs every single year, and we could probably just make that a mission at the next time to meet with the neighborhood and, see what they want and see what's possible. I know cutting them down and removing them is, like she said, an act of Congress, but planting them is a little bit different, but they do sometimes allow you to make, pathways and things like that, knowing that people are going to destroy them by trampling them or whatever. So
Okay.
we can do that next season when we plant.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Jack, yeah, any other public commentary before? Okay, go ahead.
All right.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think one thing that I think was missed maybe a little bit was there actually were plans for the roof deck that we submitted to the city, and I think we even showed them to you guys at one or two of the several meetings we had. I had them there, and I did go over them. There was a rendering, there was a thing showing the rooms, and there never has been an intent for this to be a public space, and, I naturally would go under all the codes. I think that the recorded record clearly will show what was represented at the meetings and what wasn't. But I do think that I would reaffirm that an operating agreement on this thing would show that there is no intent to run a public restaurant up there. It is about a 20-seat. The plans are there, and I'd be glad to supply you with them. There's a little exercise room, and then there's outside sun deck type chairs. To me, it'd be worse for them if, which nobody's even ever mentioned, if you had a band down by the pool, in the pool area, because that's right next door to their houses. So, but I don't think there's any intent to have regular bands or entertainment and trying to say that people can't bring their guests upstairs, or they can't bring, well, then you want to say they can't bring their guests into their rooms, or where do you want to limit this? So, I think that we've tried to show a lot of good intention, and we moved the building to as far away from the neighbors as we could. We moved it 61 feet. Actually, we moved it 45 or 46 feet. So we've been, and I appreciate that they do recognize that we did make a big effort to try and cooperate. And I think that, let me just say that there are plenty of things in the code that prevent a building from stopping, okay, construction. I, as a builder, developer, as well as an architect, go back into the 60s when I did my first project, and I went through the 70s recession when there were 50,000 unfinished condominiums in the state of Florida, and it was a better recession, I hate to say this, than the one we're in right now, because everybody went back to work finishing the buildings that everybody else left, halfway up. This recession is terrible, but was terrible because there was no construction to go to, there was no financing, there were no buildings to finish up that were left desolate. But as a result of that, there are a lot of things in the code that do prevent that, so to speak, from happening again. And abandonment of a building gets torn down. And a building that I was the architect on in Siesta Key, for example, sat vacant. It was up to the second floor when the bank went broke. And the codes are pretty clear now about abandonment of a project. And if it's abandoned, it's either going to be picked up again within a certain period of time, and I wish I could tell you the exact time, but it's not very long, or it goes into code violation and condemnation, and it gets torn down. So I think the fear of this thing partially going up is a little bit irrelevant. The codes do deal with that. The Florida Building Code and all the regulations do deal with that. And I think that there's a clear record of the last meeting, because I at first was a little aggravated when Mr. Edwards had us redo the meeting to do the recording, but I think it wound up being an accurate record of what was said. There were requests, and my notes reflect, first of all, recognize my notes, my handwritten notes that I think people were not crazy about. I'm trying to talk to everybody at the meeting, and and I tried to occasionally write down some notes, and then I sat down quickly as we went through afterwards and wrote down everything I could recall. And I don't believe I said that we were going to attempt to keep it R3, but in the front building, I said that if you want to request that of the city, you have the right to go to the commission and request that they make it a part of it. But I didn't see how that could work. And I think the city also
gotta be approached
reflected that that's kind of like trying to mix two regulations together. But I think that in the overall picture, I would be glad to represent that there are drawings of record that show that it's a very small facility on the roof, that it's not intended to be some kind of a big public enterprise, that it has limited seating. It's got outdoor seating for like sun chairs, not other. And it's, I don't think we've misrepresented anything. And I do agree that we did kind of, at the end, get to a relatively reasonably accommodation between us and the neighbors to try and accommodate each other's fears and allay most of the problems that we had. And I think that, we're prepared to go on. As far as construction goes, I I'm going to be doing the construction drawings as soon as we get past these meetings. I've already been cleared to do that. So the intent is to start at the end of this upcoming season, because they have bookings already for this season. But by the time we finish the plans, process them with the city, it's going to be the end of the season. I can't, I'll have Mr. Palmer promise he won't die over the next 2 years, but I don't know how well that's going to go.
Right.
But he does have partners that have substantial investments in it. It's not just Charles. It's about 4 people, I think, if I recall. And they don't have a lot of debt on the property relative to the value, so that's an encouraging sign. But the plan is that it would start essentially at the end of next season, going into the fall when it's slow. They'll be shut down pretty well for the next season, or inhibited business-wise, because we are going to renovate the building in the front also. And one of my comments at the meeting was that he's not going to tear down that building in the front because, A, they just remodeled the inside, but we're going to spend about $2 million just making that building look like the one in the front. And so it's crazy to spend $2 million on that and then say, well, we're going to tear it down and try and build a 5-story building there. So
You're referring to the front, you mean the west?
the
building on
west,
the west,
right.
the
Yeah, the one-
existing building.
yeah.
Okay.
And to address the sand dunes thing, I was around when a lot of that was going on, and the way the Starks got by was the seawall that they do have. They said, we have a seawall, we're protected, and most of the properties along there had their seawalls taken out or never had one in the past. So that's why they refused to sign the agreement to allow the dunes to go in place, and because of the seawall, it's been upheld all this time. So that's a decision that you or the commission needs to make as to how they feel about that. But I don't think it's necessarily a negative thing, because there is protection there. That's pretty much it. Are there any other things I didn't answer? Or?
Well, just when do you feel that the completion of the project would be?
Well, it's scheduled for about 12 months of construction. The lender is they've already negotiated a deal for the financing, and it's planned on being about a 12-month construction. So can it be done in less than that? Yeah, we built some in 10, but that's about the range, is 10 to 12 months in
Okay.
construction.
Okay.
All right, I don't remember if there was anything else I had.
I think that's it.
Pretty much it.
All right, thank you. Any other public commentary? Yes, sir?
The codes that he's talking about, I'm not familiar if Deer Beach has a particular code that says if a project isn't substantially moving along, that they can go ahead and require them to tear it down. I don't know if Madeira Beach has that. St. Petersburg does, and they had to go through the process of enacting it. But then, if the city does condemn it, who has to pay to tear it down? Well, the city, unless you have a bond or some type on the project to go ahead and not put the burden back on the taxpayers. That's all.
Thanks.
What I said is if a project's abandoned, you can't, they cannot regulate it. There are rules in the code about inspections. They do state in the code, for example, that if you don't call an inspection within 90 days, the permit becomes invalid and you have to renew it. You can only do that twice, I think, and then you're condemned, basically. Moving along is a different definition than abandoned. And there are triggers in the code that do not allow you to consistently abandon or drag along in a project and miss inspections.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that would be building code, not the city
Yeah,
code.
building code, yeah. The FPC has quite a bit of that. And then some of the cities have other restrictions that are in addition to that. But the intention with Charles and the partners he has in are, they've just put some more money in the deal and bought another partner out. And, the intent is to move right ahead. I spoke, and I wanted, there is one other thing. Yes, I did say that the intention is to use an auger-type pile, either helicals or auger cast. You don't want to be driving pilings next to, the houses that are around there and pounding them in the ground. So we do typically use augers or helicals, and they're the two design pilings we have in consideration.
Okay.
So there shouldn't be any issue with that.
Okay, good. Thanks, Jack.
For the edification of the audience, the building official, he had 7 home projects in front of me just the other day that had not stalled, but looked as if there was no activity. So the building official keeps a pretty tight time frame on that and watches that. So it's scanned, or whatever you want to call it, routinely, almost weekly.
Okay, good. I'll take the discussion back to the commission if there's no additional public commentary. No? Seeing none, I'll close that. Any discussion by the board at this time? Can I entertain a motion?
Well, since we're not going to be putting any type of operating regulations into this development agreement, and since it appears to me, and I think to the other members of the commission, that all the setbacks and everything were done as we discussed in our last meetings, I feel that we need to go ahead and move this to the board for approval between, the development agreement between Barefoot Beach Resort and the city. I think we should move that to the board.
Okay.
I'll
Do I
make
have a
that motion.
second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion on that?
I do.
Okay.
No discussion, but I
Okay.
agree with what
Okay. Can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Carr?
Yes.
Commissioner Domingue? Commissioner Noble?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence? Commissioner Rasmussen? Commissioner Everett?
Yes. Motion carries. We'll move on to the second item of new business, which is...
Mr. Chair, if you want, you can maybe take a 60-second recess in case people in the audience don't want to stay for this stimulating conversation.
Oh, okay.
about
I'll let you guys off the hook
ATM at
if you don't want to
CVS.
sit in for the ATM. We're doing new business now.
Wait.
You live and break a little bit?
Well, yeah, excuse me, ma'am, what did you want to speak about? No, I'm sorry, not this time, I just wanted to.
Well, we're
Yeah,
not,
that's not.
we're not really
we're
doing
not even gonna
anything
be
with that.
That's
putting
not
it
on the
tonight.
agenda, and
That's a
not
really,
even really. Yeah, that's not even really an issue for the plan commission.
No, that's
That
a
would
city
be an
commission issue.
for,
yes, ma'am.
well, not even the city commission, probably city administration, and so you want to come
Yeah,
see
complain
me,
to him.
probably. Just
That
come on
guy
in
right
and,
there.
just come on in and see me, but give me a buzz first, so I got the right people in the room, so I can give you some of the right answers.
Okay.
Correct. But that is something that's not regulated by the city.
All right.
That's true.
Okay.
That's true, so.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you much.
So are we ready for item number 2?
Item 2.
We could, Mr. Chair, I hate to do this to you, but this one kind of snuck up on me, and I wanted to ask a couple of questions before we get into the conversation. Is that all right with the
I'll
board?
recognize
You
you.
allow for
I'm
that?
going to read it first. though.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All right, let me read it first. So item number 2 is to consider the application for a special exception use for a standalone ATM at the CVS located at 15129 Madeira Way.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Chair.
City Manager.
For the city attorney or for Lewis, was this conditionally approved in the initial site plan for CVS when we approved them?
No, it was not.
No,
It was not.
I didn't remember it.
I don't remember it either, and let me think of a way to put this. I've been informed unofficially that that entire area could be redeveloped. And in fact, I'm pretty assured that it will, and that may or may not be information that Lewis was aware of when we went through this. And so what I'd hate to do is do something that's going to inhibit a very large development or cause a hiccup in that.
You're talking about that area in the back, that 2,500 square foot that has.
Well, where they're going to put that ATM. I'll just go on record to say it. I've been informed unofficially that the Winn-Dixie grocery store, the entire building will be raised and rebuilt and turned a different way, and we're going to redevelop that entire parcel. And so I would hate to not be able to negotiate with CVS or Pines or whoever has control of this while corporate Winn-Dixie comes in and says, hey, if that stupid ATM wasn't there, we could have done this and traded you this, and everybody could have shook hands and made a deal on something, instead of throwing an ATM up in the middle of a parcel that we don't know what it's going to look like in a matter of.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions, because originally that was slated for potential building development right behind that.
Yeah, you know, if I said everything was going to stay status quo, I would have certainly said, go ahead and approve this. You know, that I don't see this being an issue, but knowing that corporate Winn-Dixie, corporate walked in and saw the new Publix, saw its existing Winn-Dixie and says, hey, we got to do something. And so I've already got not necessarily a site plan, but a rendering of what it would look like, and they're going to completely change the way that parcel sits. And
Well,
so,
are you recommending that we table
well, I'm
this?
asking Louis, you know, I know we don't have an issue with it as it sits now, but knowing that information, is there anything that you see as potentially harmful about referring this until we, you know, get a little more solidarity or some assurance that this is actually going to happen or not happen?
That is some new information, and I think it probably would be appropriate if the attorney agrees to table this item.
Yeah, I didn't share that because I was asked not to, but considering the circumstances tonight, I really think it wouldn't make sense to throw something like that up in the middle of.
Well, again, that was going to be one of my questions, because I know some of the conversations around what was going to occur in that part of the parcel.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, why are they sticking an ATM in the front?
Well, it's like right in the middle, and considering the orientation of the building, at least the way that they want to do it, if you can kind of follow me, they want to almost point Winn-Dixie towards CVS, towards the Ocean Sands building, so they get Gulf Boulevard exposure.
Right.
The idea being that they would flood-proof the building and then put 2 or 3 stories of parking on top of it, which solves my event parking issues. The city might even be in a position to lease a level of parking or whatever. And I'm probably getting a little bit off topic, but long story short, I'd hate to do something tonight as silly as one ATM, throw a wrench into the engine on that. So I think staff recommendation from this side of the room, if that side of the room is okay with it, is that we would table this until further notice.
All right,
Absolutely.
let me just jump in here. Do we have the applicant here? Are you here, sir, for that? Okay. Could you step up to the podium and tell us who you are and what your relationship to the project is? Because I have some questions for you before you go.
Yeah, my name is David Discavage. I'm the contractor who's building it for Wells Fargo Security Vault Works.
Okay. And you're ready to move forward with the application with the understanding that what the city manager just had to say?
Well, I can't speak for them, but that may just kill the deal with the Wells Fargo, to be honest with you. The only thing they were proposing to do was remove 2 parking spaces, move a parking island to allow the ATM to still be there.
I understand. My question to you is that right now there is a recommendation by the city manager that this be postponed. Do you think that would be beneficial to be postponed, or are you as the applicant wanting to move forward with the application?
Well, I would like to, yeah, I think well, good question. I think right now postpone it, yes.
Okay. All right. That's what I wanted to know, so that you have the applicant now, Mr. Chairman, saying that he thinks that it should be postponed, the city staff thinks it should be postponed, and then it's up to you.
Well, I think the appropriate thing at this time is to entertain
as long as we've got you're the contractor?
Yes, I am.
I had just this silly idea, and I think real simply when it comes to building, because I don't know what I'm talking about, but what, you know, you see those ATMs that are built into the building, they're on the exterior, but they're, you know, accessible. Would CVS be interested in putting the ATM into their building, if you follow me?
I can't speak for CVS. I was actually there today, and I do believe that they have an agreement with another ATM manufacturer to supply ATMs to their, so we would be.
It would be internal though, or external? If they have the ATM inside the building?
They have an ATM inside the building.
Inside, so
they have a walk-up lobby unit inside the building.
Oh, so they want to do an external one on the building and do this?
It's a different bank.
It's a different bank. This is for Wells Fargo. This is to serve the Wells Fargo customer.
I think this must be a deal with Wells Fargo.
It must be.
Developer.
Marcy, do you want to come on up to the podium too? And Marcy works for Doolin Associates and was filling in while we had our extended medical leave, as well as Louis.
And we put Dave through it. The one thing that, and I think, would you start in August with us?
Yes, at least, but it's starting before that.
And I completely agree with Shane. He's 100% on this. The way that it's currently situated is concerning long-term. But with the Madeira Beach Development Code, and Louis, please correct me, the issue here is we really don't have an opportunity to just somebody say, hey, I own this property, I want to put an ATM in, and we go, oh, okay, look, we have the rules that govern queuing and things like that. That's what makes this difficult. It's not even necessarily the location of it, it's that we don't have anything in place that makes putting an ATM anywhere in Madeira Beach an easy process. Every ATM currently would have to go before you guys. That's pretty much fair to say the way the code's written?
Drive-up ATMs, yes, that's correct. It's a difficult process for what they're putting in.
Yeah, so no matter where it would be. So I guess my question in this is maybe we don't approve necessarily the exact location, but maybe we can review what he's brought to us that says, hey, I think my queuing's 3 cars or whatever you put in, and say, we can consider that, but we'd like the opportunity not to lock in the location, but we agree with the spacing you've provided us and that we can do that. And that's just my thought.
No,
It's something to look forward to in the future for the city of Madeira Beach.
Yeah, we could take that up. We'd obviously have to have the right preparation.
Yeah, I would
I have a
agree.
question.
I think to, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I don't know if this is feasible or not, but you can't just put the ATM in their drive-through that they have for the drugstore, and then you go through, they already have the drive-throughs right there, and they don't, I mean, you drive by there, there might be 1 car in there, or is it just has to be separate because of their agreement with a different bank?
That would be between CVS and Wells Fargo. And
Correct.
Also, isn't that a different parcel over there? And the parcel, yeah.
I think
But it's the same owner, isn't it? I mean, the same, CVS owns all that property, don't they?
Well, they don't own it. CVS has got a land lease on that, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay,
That's right.
I see.
So, and if the verbiage is called queuing, you know, I think there's 3 for an ATM, or should be 3 for an ATM. I've seen the drive-through at CVS actually backed out to the road.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so
I haven't seen
it's hit or miss, but I would hate to add
Well,
to
with all
that.
due respect, the time of those transactions are much longer. I have
Correct.
provided, I provided a traffic study done in Hillsborough County, which basically has it down to 40-second transaction at most, and during the study, they only saw 2 cars at one time, so
For the ATM you're referring to now?
It was for a Chase ATM as
Okay.
opposed to the Wells Fargo, but it's the exact same application.
Well, you haven't been behind some of the people I have in the ATM line. but
Considering the development that is going to be proposed, obviously, we're going to need an ATM there, so I mean, we're not going to eliminate the
Yeah,
project.
but I hear
just
what
would
you're
hate to-
saying. I don't want to stick it out there and
to
then
do something, you know, in the
create an issue.
meantime, you know, we could advise the city attorney to work with our consultants to, if we have a ATM issue in terms of ordinance or regulation, we could get going on that.
So what I'd like to do, twice, is help him with his time, and at least so that he doesn't have to necessarily come back over here and come before us again. Maybe we can revisit this as far as just the physical aspect of the ATM, not blocking the location. So whatever we can do to help him along with this, and again, with future ATMs and stuff like that.
We can't do that tonight. This is a special
No.
Oh, yeah,
special
not
exception
tonight.
with regard to
No, no,
this
no.
particular parcel. So we can't be reviewing an application for an unknown parcel tonight.
Right.
We need to just either postpone it or
We're
move
gonna
forward.
I think she's just, I think what Marcy's referencing is future regulation, you know, if we want to come
Right.
up with
Something to take up in the
different
future.
policy,
Right.
but that's fine. But tonight, if the gentleman is fine with it, I would certainly, and, you know, staff recommendation is for referral until further notice or put it on the table. I would appreciate that as long as the negotiations with corporate Winn-Dixie are still ongoing.
My advice to you, Mr. Chairman, is to postpone it to a date certain. Otherwise, it's going to die on the floor. So either the next meeting or the following meeting, so 30, 60 days out, whatever, so the applicant will know, you know, when he's got to be back.
What kind of timeline are we thinking?
I think I need more than that. I mean, if we put it on the table, we can take it off the table whenever we want procedurally, correct or not?
It'll die at the end of this
It'll get
meeting.
lost.
Yeah, so we need to postpone it to a date certain. That's the only way to protect the applicant.
Well, I would certainly ask for a 90-day referral, and if we don't have any information, we'll contact you so you don't come to a useless meeting. But you know how these developments go. I mean, Publix took years, you know, so I don't know if I'll have anything within the next 3 months, especially considering the holiday season.
This still has to go to special magistrate, so that will add an additional 30 days.
Yeah.
Roughly, so.
Can I entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion that we postpone the Wells Fargo ATM until our February 2016 meeting. revisit it then.
And Marcy, could you just take a note that will inform the applicant if we don't have anything
Do I have a
further?
second to that?
I'll second.
Any discussion on the board? Can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Carr?
Yes.
Commissioner Domingue? Commissioner Noble?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence? Commissioner Rasmussen? Commissioner Everett?
Yes. Motion carries. And with that, is there any discussion with the Planning Commission? Anything anybody needs to bring up? No? Mike, you good?
I'm good.
Okay. Jeff? You're good? Everybody good? Okay, well, with that, is there any, I don't believe there's any old business that's been before us. Mr. City Attorney, is there anything that you need to share other than what we've discussed this evening?
No, thank you. Appreciate
Okay.
the time, though.
Staff, you're all, Lewis, you're all good?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. That's it.
Close it.
I'll be happy to entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mike. Do we have a second?
Right here.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.